Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to this evening's episode. I wanted to give the audience my perspective on creativity. And how would I say it, a very insightful sentence that I managed to forge. Does creativity mean you are a new person all the time? And in the subtitle of this episode, I've written Precursor to the Portals of Creation episode. In this episode, I aim to share some new perspectives on creation, creativity, and potential notion of portals and the invisible door concept we are acquainted with in metaphysics. And in ancient metaphysics, they would say there is a veil, there is a curtain, as if this world of ours, we are not getting access to the full show, that there is a curtain, and behind this curtain the implications of the nature of reality are different. The Portals of Creation episode, I've made some notes for this episode, but I'll say this, that I was thinking of this notion that women are portals, and this is why I'm saying this episode is a precursor to the Portals of Creation episode, is because there I'm going to try to gracefully and respectfully speak about another angle that reality is taking place, and we as a species that is way focused on our material observable dimensions have maybe not been taken into account. Now, some of the ideas here, people should know who've been listening to these talks for a while, that as I speak, I also brainstorm in the sense of geometrically building levels upon what I'm saying. And when I say building levels upon what I'm saying, you see, the nature of the mind is that it works through images, and then an image, like a trunk of a tree, branches out. And what does an image branch out? Into other images. Do you know? And these images can in any moment be translated into language. There are incidents in, I would say, one's experience of mind, this thing that we're calling mind. We all say we have minds, but we don't know what the mind is. Like, it's hilarious. But in our experience of our mind, how would I say what I want to say? Pretty much here, I'll dive into it into the episode, but just to get the train running. In this episode, I want to talk about the notion of portals, the notion of an entrance into a potentially different reality, We are currently in a reality, and physical reality is like the common denominator between all human beings, regardless of their worldviews and how abstract they are or not. That means people may think is there a mind, is there a soul, is there a beyond, is there the unknown, all of this, or give it even archetypes. Are there angels? Are there gods? Are there interdimensional beings? Are we interdimensional beings? Like before these questions, I'm saying that it's like there's physical reality in common, and the common denominator, and we're all starting as a human. So a human being is asking the question. And when looking at how the human being comes about, one can ask questions from their present. So what that means is, it's like imagining if you were teleported to, let's say, another civilization across the galaxy, and they were similar to Earth somehow, and you were landed there on the street. They had streets or something. It's as if, what would be your reaction? How would the intelligence try to figure itself out if it's in a completely new place where there is no past reference points? And what I mean, not that there isn't past reference points, but it's just that if you wonder if the whole scenario is completely unknown, what can the mind do? What can the intelligence do? I thought about this notion of creativity. We consider that we are creative, all of us are creative beings, because the act of survival requires a certain level of intelligence, and this intelligence has to find a way to get to the next day. So pretty much we are like this genetical pattern, and we are continuing this genetical pattern, and this genetical pattern's sophistication is like the whole show of civilization. Now, I want to start from this perspective, whether one thinks there's somewhere new or not, that on this earth currently, we know certain facts, and these facts have deeper implications. What that means is the fact is like the tip of the iceberg, and what is surrounding the meaning, or how the fact is held, can be more ambiguous, can be more unknown. A person could be like, yeah, a world is here in front of me right now, I am here, I have free will, but then through a materialistic perspective, suddenly notice that all of this is the hallucination of chemical reactions, which we are not considering to be sentient. That means they're not conscious. So it's like we right now, from the materialistic perspective, something unconscious is leading to consciousness, or is hallucinating or projecting consciousness. Now, the implication of that truly being unconscious, and what does the unconscious even mean to a conscious entity, or to an entity who has only had consciousness? What that means is the way we know the world is here is because there are eyes in the room. The fact of our biological existence I'm waiting for this car alarm to stop, and it's just ridiculously going. I don't know if the listeners can hear it. Okay. Okay. Let me start from the question to get myself back into the rhythm of the episode. Does creativity mean we are a new person all the time, or you are a new person all the time? I would say in order for us to be creative, and there's creativity happening in multiple levels, creativity is the emergence of new geometry. Something new, something that has not been seen before. It is the unfamiliar entering the space of the familiar. Our familiar intelligence is in the domain of our consciousness. Our consciousness has a sort of identity simply because it has a past. So as a biological phenomena, as some sort of biological intelligence, we are like cameras, like our eyes are like cameras, and we are recording everything. And some of these recordings have emotions in them, and so the person can easily remember them. Or they have a specific content, or they attach to the psyche, or the more conscious domain of the psyche. That means if we kind of see, I should say kind of, but if we see the intelligence of the human being as like an onion with like some sort of onion geometry, it's like the central sphere, which is the first sphere of the central sphere of the onion, of this concentric sphere, is consciousness. Now surrounding this sphere there is more unknown. As if when it comes to the biology, we can see it, we can physically be it, so it's verifiable. But when it comes to the mind, it is less verifiable. We know that there is imagination, but we can't touch our imagination. That means a person can't visualize an apple and suddenly grab it, right? But they can visualize it, which means imagination has design, has a sort of shapehood. So imagination is like the second layer, the mind is like the second layer, and the soul is like the layer that encompasses that layer. So it's becoming more unknown. Now, if we think about what creativity is, we are in a changing world, and our identity is emerging out of recording certain parts of this changing world and holding on to it as ourselves. It's as if it's like life is a film, and we are an actor, and this actor, as it goes, certain moments where it does things, it remembers more than others. So those memories are closer to the central sphere, and so they are remembered. And sometimes it can be evoked. Somebody they look back at something they wrote years ago, and suddenly they get a memory of what kind of day they had when they wrote it. Think of all those people who write journals. Like, journaling is a sort of time traveling, but in regards to the mind simulating reality. We know that the cells of our body change. We know that a person wakes up every day and their personality gets new dimensions based on how it moves, what it does, and all that. So it's as if as our bodies change and our experience of the physical moment is different, our personalities change. As we have experiences and remember those experiences, our personality gets shaped, gets sculpted out of it. Now the thing is that the personality is changing, so it's as if the body and the mind are like, or think of it this way, it's as if when a person changes their mind, it's as if they are taking off their t-shirt, which is, let's say, the color black, and they're wearing a t-shirt that's colored white, or taking off their white t-shirt and wearing a t-shirt that's black. What it is, it's like a shift. So it's as if the body is there just because the person changed their clothing. Their body didn't change, but something changed. So one dimension stood still, the other dimension shifted. But when we look at what is really going on this planet, before we even ask the question of creativity, we got to be like, what is here and how can it even be creative? Like, what is wondering about creativity? That is a changing thing, and it's a changing thing that is aware of itself. So if we look at lesser species, like squirrels and birds, it's as if they are kind of like a camera that is recording the moment, but they are a camera that is not aware they are a camera. We, our species, which is behaving completely different than all animal life on this planet, is in some sense, how would I say it, is conscious that there is a camera, but we don't know who is looking through that camera. And that who is really, we think it's in the domain of self-creation, but anything we create in a changing world is actually change. So it's as if we're bookmarking a changing world, and that's how we're extracting identity from the way the world is moving. So it's like our body is changing, what we consider our mind space, our mind is changing, the mind that is moving that body. But something that is not changing is the awareness that knows it has memories. It's as if it's like that moment where a person is just like standing and somebody's like, hey, do you remember what you did yesterday, and then that person, from that present moment, it's as if they either close their eyes or not, and they go back to the past. So what that means is it's as if that we are not in time when we are in the present, but we have an ability to go into time from the present. And what is present is awareness. And there is a distinction between consciousness and awareness. And even when some people say conscious awareness, consciousness is conditional to form. Awareness is unconditional. So it's as if we are aware that we are conscious. I would say there's no such thing as conscious awareness. If consciousness is coming first, then awareness. I would say there is awareness, because how is the free will's way from? It's like what is the eyes of the free will are nothing until it moves, until it decides. creativity, I feel, forever will remain a mystery, simply because it's as if we have given the word change to change. But it can never be the past because it is the entrance of the new. That means a creative person is as if someone who for a moment has forgotten the past or is not paying attention to the past and is looking at the present and what can be seen anew. Right? But now at the same time there's this, I guess this complex, I could see a counter to what I'm saying, in the sense that it's as if you need to know the alphabet first, and then you create new words from that alphabet. But the alphabet can be seen as the past. It's as if we need something that is a precondition to meaning, to be able to shape meaning and to be able to consider meaning's change. But it's very strange, I would say, because for me, there's moments where, like in my youth, I thought creativity meant you have a new idea. Then I realized ideas are coming from vision, and if the person has a new vision, the idea cannot stay the same. That means the person experiences something more. It's like their whole universal system of philosophy is shifting. We know that there are eyes in the room of existence. We know this. Everybody who's listening to me right now, you are hearing sounds, and there is the relationship one has with themselves is that they are the hearer. And our identities are in some sense names to subjective selfhood. It's as if a name is a subject, believe it or not. There is the physical body. It is changing in accordance to the forces of the universe, to the laws of nature. But when we look at how the mind is changing, the mind is like having a cinematic experience of the body, where it's as if we are watching our own self as it is happening, and that's how we know we are here somewhere in the world. It took us 4.5 billion years to evolve to just to know, we notice we're here. You know, there's some people, I've heard it in culture and society, it's as if like the statistics for people being depressed, people feeling anguish, people feeling void is like increasing, right? It's as if people are suffering from the existential circumstance, the existential condition. But when I look at it, it's as if it took us 4.5 billion years of evolution to just be able to notice that suffering. So that suffering is, any person who's suffering, that's an incredible achievement, because there are creatures, there are beings that they suffer and they can't notice they're suffering. You know, we, on the other hand, when we suffer, we notice we are suffering. That's an achievement of evolution. Now, this sort of suffering is a narrative of the potential of the human being. And if we look at the human being, then I was going to keep this for the Portals of Creation episode, but I guess I'll talk about it now to also make myself more comfortable talking about it. But I would say that what I'm going to say maybe sound a bit, the way I'm going to talk about it may seem a bit absurd, but I feel it's important to look at the geometry of reality. When we look at the body, we see that the body is created from man and woman. And so it's as if the sperm is the potential of the human being, and it's as if, this may sound a bit crude, but I'm just saying it for the, again, for the design value of it. It's as if from the genitalia of the male comes the potential of the human being, and from the genitalia of the woman comes the actual human being. So this notion of portals and the portals of creation, it's as if we are emerging out of each other, believe it or not, any human being that is alive now. Now this emergence is very sophisticated. Of course, it goes back to the DNA and the biology, and even the ecosystem that provides the biology provides an opportunity for the biology, but it's like a suggestion that it's as if, like, for example, this is where I would say women are an incredible, have an incredible design in which that a human being can enter the world through them, right? But for men, it's not, they don't have the physical experience of it, but in some sense there is the, it's as if like every human being's mind is creative, but women's body is also creative. Man's body is not creative in the same way as a woman's body. And what if one brings in metaphysics into this? I mean, I can totally go into yogic thought of concepts of reincarnation, or certain schools of thought who believe like the soul enters the body in the womb like after a couple of weeks or something. You know, so there is various ideologies on this. Various human beings have opinions on this, but when I look at the reality, physical reality, we have emerged and we have emerged out of circumstances before us, and even though the person has the genetics of their ancestors, they are not their ancestors. So it's as if the old renewed. You see? So it's as if it's neither the old and it's neither completely new. It's as if it's like a revival of the past in a new circumstance. Now, when we look at the creative process, there was this artist, I remember seeing this interview on YouTube, this artist by the name of Aurora, this famous artist, this famous musician by the name of Aurora. To be honest, I don't know if I've listened to her music or not. Maybe people have played it and I've listened to it. But anyways, this artist said something very fascinating on this interview show, and she says that when she creates art, it's as if she is the child, she is the father, and she is the mother. It's as if she gets to the creativity of the mind. When it comes to the creativity of the mind, it's as if it's experiencing all the dimensions at once. But when it comes to the creativity of the body, of course, it's limited. And so we cannot ignore, like when you look at, even forget like the notion of supernatural, just look at inventors. Inventors, what are they doing? They are seeing a potential invention in their mind, and as they act upon that invention, they bring it into actualization. And it's the same, like you can say, with biology, where it's as if man and women are inventing children. You see, it's as if but it's unconsciously, in the sense that it's not just the genetics that is following; it is the urges, right? So I would say it's as if we don't consider this now, but I feel the psychology of the mother may suggest the urges that the child is born through. But anyways, what I'm trying to say is that when we look at the biology, there is a creative process. People are emerging and out of people. And when we look at the mind is an emergence, but the mind's creativity is different. For example, right now as I'm giving this talk, it's as if I feel I am what I'm saying. Do you see what I mean? It's as if in the creative act, one is not separate, or it's as if they are the child, the mother, the father. They're the whole moment being happening. Do you know? Another point of view that can be shared is that a creative person, in order to do something new, it cannot be the past, or it's not new. So it's as if in order for the new to enter, the person cannot have the same past. It changes the one's past. So in some sense, creativity, I would say the answer to the question, does creativity mean you're a new person all the time? I would say definitely means you're a new being. If the person is coming from the personality, I mean, sure, if a person experiences something they haven't experienced before, there's incredible evidence of this, that a person changes. You know, somebody's having a good day, then something bad happens, and then at night it's like they started the day very high energy, then in the evening they're just low energy. You know, it's as if the experiences, there was a sort of exchange of their life force with the events of the day, with the sequence of actions they did throughout the day, from the moment they woke up to the moment they were going to sleep. Because really, physical living is that you pretty much wake up to the world, and then action, then sleep. Do you see what I mean? And those actions, we as human beings of the modern age, tend to go towards quality, right? That means it's like people are experiencing this now with all these, for example, dating apps and whatnot. You know, it's as if people back in the day, they asked this couple who was like they just asked this couple who was 65, and they're like, the couple had been with each other for like 50 years, or not 50, or maybe 50 years, I don't know. Probably not 50 years, like 40 years. And in that 40 years, they asked them, like, how did you guys make it this long? Right? And the couple responds and says, we came from a time, the old couple says, we came from a time when something was broken, we would fix it. We wouldn't replace it. So now in this modern culture, modern global culture, they think that the standard of living is going up, but actually when there's a lot of something, the person's desire for it goes away. That means, I know this even from the beginning of these talks, that it's like the more if I had just given a few talks, it would have a different sort of allure than somebody giving a lot of talks, you know. But because the content was vast and the world is a gigantic unknown landscape, I feel that it doesn't make sense. Like, marketing is not prioritized over truth, and what truth means is the mysteries of the realm being attended to. But what I'm trying to say is that our attention is moving in a certain way where it thinks creativity is a rather jumping from one thing to another, but it could also be a sort of rebuilding. And so this is totally an implication of impatience. The species in its inner realms is expecting faster results. When the results are not that fast, it dismisses. The psychology can't dismiss. You know, this is the complexity of human beings. First of all, there's 8 billion human beings, 8 billion different DNAs. At the same time, every person is so sophisticated that it's as if behind their eyes there's a world there. Do you know? And when people interact, it's as if these worlds are stepping out from the voices of the person. Do you know? From the mouths of the person. In the act of communication, we are revealing what kind of world we're walking in. And then others can relate. And so if creativity is being seen as something that is reference based, anything that the person hears, it's like the moment they heard it for the first time, oh wow, novelty, creativity. Then the second time they hear it, not creative, not novel. But in every act, in every moment, there are a completely shift, as if a person was to think that every moment has a ratio of known variables and unknown variables. This known and unknown variable ratio is changing all the time. That means even if a person generates the same sounds in the inner realm, it's like the reality has shifted. So, really this episode is kind of like a challenge for me too, because I know that there is something known as I have coined it as the language threshold, where I consider that first of all there's an indirectly experiential level to our being. That means it's like this intelligence that we're in the moment. Our physical body allows us to experience things with an impact that the mind doesn't allow. That means if a person actually goes skydiving, they will experience something, and then if a person they will have a direct experience. But if a person closes their eyes and visualize they're diving from the sky, that visualization may become as intense. If their eyes are closed long enough, that visualization may become so intense that their body actually is responding to the simulation. You know what it is? It's kind of like our minds are like cyberspace before cyberspace is here. Right? That means it's as if a person can close their eyes and they can think of like yesterday it was a sunny day, even though they're closing their eyes at night. Okay, but they can go back to a moment where it was a sunny day or whatnot, right? And so what is happening there? Their body is responding to the inner realm, to the world that is found as their eyes are closed. And that world simulates the same reactive responses from the moment it happened. That means it's like when I remember before giving a talk yesterday, I had sat at this table I'm sitting at, and the sunlight was hitting me. I can right now close my eyes and instantly remember that warmth, the warmth of those rays hitting me. It's not just we're remembering memories, we remember emotions. And I would tell you that the emotional dimension to the human being is like, again, if I was to go to the onion layer metaphor, is one of those onion layers that surpasses even thought. That means it's as if people are thinking, who was I in my past life, right? That's a concept. But if the person wonders about, in some sense, what emotion or what field of emotions was I moving in my past life, right? If there was that idea of a past life. had to do something, guys. I'm back now. My attention goes on to the geometry of phenomenology. And the geometry of the phenomenology, at first, our way of understanding it is through images, but then it becomes a film, and anything that begins moving begins having potential unknown abilities to move. That means it's as if when somebody is standing still, it is very clear to us what they're doing. But when somebody moves, or somebody is moving around, or a creature moves around, we're like, we don't know what that creature is going to do, If somebody sees, for example, a lion sleeping in the forest, right, it's as if they know the activity of that lion. But when the lion moves, they don't know if the lion's going to jump at them or what the lion's going to do. He's going to walk past them. So you see, it's like movement is an introduction to an unknown space where there is potentials and probabilities emerge. We as creatures in this world, we are conscious of these probabilities. Other species are not. Right now, as I'm talking about this idea, it's as if I notice it in one way in my inner realms, and I notice it in another way, and these are all probabilities of how one thing can move in space. The point I want to make right now is that, as I was saying earlier, just like how the body changes, one's mind changes, like as if they're changing their t-shirt, the body is still there. It's as if awareness is constant, awareness is space, so it's as if we are space. We are the space of the space, we're just space. And in this space, we are observing a physicality that is moving, that is being filtered through the laws of nature, and as subjectivity, a non-physicality, a subjectivity that is being filtered through, I would say, the laws of the free will. And what that means is the world in front of our eyes, it's set it is not set by the free will. It's as if no one person, it's like people didn't create the laws of the universe, they just found themselves in it. So the laws of nature are set by something else, or by somehow else, if it's not a thing. But when we come to the inner realms, and then it's as if we are like a pilot of our own attention, then it's set by us. So these words that I'm saying, it's as if I'm choosing what to say. But in my inner realms, what I see before I speak, that's not really up to choice. It's kind of like we're all antennas, and we receive in different dimensions. When we receive something physically, it comes across as pleasure or pain. When we receive something internally, if it does not have an implication for the outer realm, there is no pain or pleasure. It's just like watching phenomena. It's like watching eventhood, but like a sub-event, as if like the body is a film and the mind is a film over this body, and the mind and the film of the mind we are the director of, but the film of the body we're not the director of. That means we can choose how to move our body, but a lot of biological functions are happening involuntarily. Right? Like I'm not thinking about, like while giving this talk, I'm not thinking like my heartbeat, I'm not thinking about like my lungs, like I'm not consciously saying, okay, inhale, exhale. Do you see what I mean? It's as if they are in the abode of nature. They are in the dimension of nature, part of nature's program. Right? So it's that little percent, I shouldn't say little, but it's like a certain part of nature that has can be controlled by this emergent attention that every individual is. Now, what I'm trying to build up to is this notion where it's this trio of the body, mind, soul. The body is like the t-shirt. This is going to complete what I was trying to say, like with the previous metaphor. The body is changing, the mind is changing, and the space that is aware of this change and can make decisions upon it is not changing. So what I mean by that is that our shape is changing. The reflection of these shapes in the inner realms, our cellular planes of abstraction, is changing, but both of them are being observed. That means this dilemma of, are we an object, are we a subject? It's as if we are watching both of them, and then there is the whole animation of the humanization of the individual. So what I'm trying to say is that in the attempt to answer the question of what is creativity, and does creativity mean you're new being all the time, I'm saying that we are something that is neither past, neither future. We are as if an invisible field-like watcher of the moment. That watcher is nothing. It's as if there's an observing there's a viewer, just like how people are hearing my talk right now. You can view, you're like viewing this video on YouTube. I'm just saying you are viewing your objective dimensions and your subjective dimensions. You are viewing it, and that viewer is not like right now as you are hearing this video, you're seeing this video, you're not the video. Do you see? So you are not what you're observing. So if there is a dimension to our if there is something about the presence of our intelligence that is watching itself and can be conscious it's changing, that means it didn't change with the change. That's how we can only be conscious of change. That means the first person who noticed change actually attained eternity. The awareness to change is changeless. Because if it was changing, there would be no awareness to it. It would be a sort of, rather than watching the roller coaster from the outside, we would be on it, and there would be no way of talking about it from outside. In my experience, something I've shared in previous talks, maybe in the 200, 400 range, is that this experience of what I call advanced communication, it came to me through an incredible preferencelessness. You see, it's as if it's the post-rejected psychology of attaining an ultimate desire. That post-rejected psychology, literally, it's as if when somebody, have you noticed, it's like when somebody sees that they are a failure, let's say, or somebody fails, it's as if somehow their desires for the future relax, and then the future happens for them quickly. And when I'm using the term failure, I'm just saying that something happens in life where, imagine somebody there was one glass cup, and somebody came to get this glass cup and get a glass of water, and the glass cup falls and breaks. Right? So imagine now the person not having an interest, as if the person is believe, I need to have a glass cup to drink water, and when the glass cup breaks, and if the person suddenly sees like, okay, I can't have the desire of a glass cup anymore, imagine that was the last glass cup on earth. And so it's as if after the glass cup is gone, the person's like, okay, there is no more glass cup. And then the person realizes they could use their hands to drink from the tap, or they could just go to the tap and drink water from there. Do you see? So it's as if when the desire for a certain have-to-be way of the future happening kind of goes away, the person comes into a neutrality, and from that neutrality, they have access to various potentials. It's as if too much desire is in some sense a fixation on what the future has to be. But the future can never be what we think of it. And let me tell you why. Because again, too many unknown variables. We're right now, as I'm speaking, I'm one human being out of 8 billion plus human beings on this planet. Every human being has their own inner realm. Every human being has their own approach to reality. Every human being, in accordance to their DNA being different, is seeing something that other human beings are not. And so, in our efforts to communicate and try to figure out what's going on as a species, right, various ideological systems have stemmed out, have branched out, the branches of knowledge. Now, these branches of knowledge make us feel as if there is no trunk, or it's making us have this impression that it's like a new branch will not emerge. But I am telling you, it seems to me, as someone who has piloted in his inner realms, and as my mind, I would tell you that it is not seeking. It's like a different frequency from the person who is looking for something. The person who's looking for something, they already think they already know what it is they're looking for, right? But when it comes to the true nature of reality, as the ancient yogis talked about self-realization, it is not even something you can look for. That means all those people seeking for truth, it's like, what are you seeking? Do you know? It's like, are you seeking language? Are you seeking an image, a photograph? Are you seeking a film? Are you seeking a timeless moment? And if the moment is timeless, there is no content to it. So to me, creativity is how everything is happening everything is happening at once prior to the compartmentalization of and photograph of self from that one used to be. You see, so there are some people who their memories are a burden for them. That means the way they have piloted in this life, maybe it has been heavy. Some people, maybe they have the sort of karma where they pilot in a lighter way. Do you know? But either way, it's as if we are like that, again, biological video camera, and all these films that it's like as if consciousness is like when the record button was pressed, and when the record button wasn't pressed, it's like so many things were seen unconsciously, but the camera wasn't recording it. But the most phenomenal thing about the camera metaphor is that the human being that is using the camera is not made of the camera. So it could be that the user, we are not human beings, we are unknown users of the human experience. I gave this talk a while back called Different Levels of Logging into Consciousness, and for a second I saw the whole world like a multiplayer online game, and how every person who's born, it's as if they've created an account. You know, they have a sort of character customization, and every day they wake up, it's as if our attention is logging in to this multiplayer online game where all these characters are on one physical earth. You see, it's not that. It could be that there has been a fallacy in trying to interpret cyberspace through technology first. You know, as if like cyberspace is actually collective fieldhood. It's like a field of intelligent activity, you know, without having segments. You know, it's as if it's like, you know what it is? This is true mysticism, guys. When you realize that, it's as Attar says, regardless of the sea will be the sea, regardless of the drops philosophy. What that means is the event of creation, the event of existence is all simultaneous. That means we're all living at once when we are conscious in the world. We're all alive. And so life may not be a concept. And we have given it a concept, we have given it a body, we have given it a name, we have given it a personality, but it could transcend these. And if it truly transcends these, that means one of the most fascinating things, that it's as if it's an artist suddenly realizing, wait a minute, when I painted this picture, is something painting my mind before I painted this picture? You see, it's as if could it be that the space of our intelligence is a canvas for the unfathomable? Just like the paintbrush is like when you look at imagine there's a pen. Let me use the paintbrush. Imagine there's a paintbrush on a canvas, okay? And imagine there's paint somewhere, okay? So this paintbrush on the canvas is just lying there on the canvas. Nobody has held it. Nobody is doing anything with the paintbrush. But suddenly, an unknown hand, an unknown attention, an unknown hand picks up the paintbrush and starts and puts the paintbrush in paint and then starts painting with it. So similarly, an unknown attention enters the body and starts living through it. But that act of living could be, in some sense, the unknown brush. Now, in different schools of thought, when we, for example, look at ancient thought, we see there was a phase where people had monotheism, and there was a phase even prior to that where it was polytheism, and there was a phase prior to that where it was sort of pantheism, right? It was getting to the point where it was as if truth is all of nature. Then people were like, no, truth is parts of nature. Then people were like, no, truth is all of nature, but it is personalized in accordance to this revelatory text. Do you see? So in some sense, it is this kind of sculpting of the personality in trying to realize that prior to that it was a particle moving in a field. It is the field. So what I'm trying to say, dear listeners, is that creativity is a state of non-existential observance of existence, which is captured in time and in matter. So creativity is literally like the ocean. Do you know? The source of it. Or I would say a creative person is having an oceanic experience. That means everything is kind of forgotten. Like there's this thing they say about Nikola Tesla, where when Nikola Tesla is the inventor of the AC motor, and Nikola Tesla was pretty much feeding pigeons, writing notes in his notebook in the park, and suddenly the patent, the design for the AC motor lands in his inner realms, and he quickly grabs a stick and draws it in the sand. So Nikola Tesla is a huge invention that gave us an ability, pretty much you can say Nikola Tesla's invention fulfilled Edison's life purpose. Globalized Edison's life purpose of the invention of the light bulb. Even though Edison developed the DC motor, that was Edison overachieving. And aside from creativity, I mean, when you look at reality, pretty much I see this geometry that either like a seed, there is a predestination to it. It's just like you plant a seed in the soil, people will look at that seed, it's like, oh, the seed's gonna be a tree? No way the seed's gonna be a tree. And then you put it in the soil, you plant the seed in the right field, and suddenly after a while it becomes like a tree, and then it gives fruits, and then those fruits have seeds, and those seeds become more trees. So you see, it's like there's something going on here that even though if we individualize creativity and we're like, yo, look at that creative person, it's like it's a creative universe. The universe is in motion. And because it is in motion, any moment a person notices its movement, that is creativity. It is watching change. It's as if like change is being live streamed in the universe, but only a few people have joined the live stream. I would say that something where I've shared, I dedicated many episodes to, not many, but like a couple episodes to this, where one episode I remember I tried to just explain to the viewers what's going on in my inner realms when I'm giving these talks. And believe it or not, like I do make notes sometimes, but there is a feeling, it's as if it's not fast enough. So what it is like I come and sit down, and I for a second forget, like I'm this person giving a talk, I'm this podcaster or whatever, and for a second I just forget everything and I just look at where I am. You know, I have realized something, that if all the information, if all the subjective knowledge I had in some sense was not accessible, I still have access to my direct experience. Because we're consciously experiencing life, that is like an endless source of geometrical change. That means if you look at your own life, whoever you are, you'll be fascinated. You're like this artwork that had never been drawn before you were born. It's like we're the artwork of the planet, or the artwork of the universal event. Or if you're religious, we are the artwork of God. We are truth's expression, whatever that truth is. If it's personalized, if it's not personalized. The secular mind doesn't personalize truth. That means its mysteries are more world-oriented than what is in the world. But I would say when we look at religion, it is personalized. That means if you ask a religious person what is the purpose of life, they would say it's your connection with your creator. Try to establish a connection with your creator. You know, but if you ask someone who's secularly minded what is the purpose of life, they're like, look around you. You know? That means the purpose is not limited to just a mind engagement. You know, it is also embodied. Every day I wake up, I am reminded that I'm a physical organism. But there is a space between before I fall asleep every night. Right before I fall asleep, I know that I am not a subject, and it's just being. So I am telling the listeners that in this world that we find ourselves in, first of all, the reason we can have a comfort in exploring it is because it's unknown. That means I'm not someone here saying, yo guys, this is it, this is the only truth. I'm saying it's an unknown, incredibly unknown, and this is how far I've seen it displayed. These are the the culminations of the waves of information that have impacted my awareness. So that field-like state, I would say that when Nikola Tesla, I mean, think about it this way. Right now, as I'm talking, like in the microphone, I am, how would I say it? It's first-person point of view. I'm looking out through my eyes. I am aware of my surroundings. I'm even aware of what's behind me, where I'm sitting. I'm aware of the neighbors. I'm aware of the noises, you know. However, because it's first-person point of view, I'm not envisioning like a third-person view of myself. For example, when a person plays a video game, some video games are designed in third-person perspective, where you are like watching from above the head of the character. Right now, as I'm giving this talk, it's like first-person, all right? And because it's first person, when I think about something, there is no image of me thinking it. It's just like the thought is there, and then in the act of communication, there's personality emerging. For me, anytime I want to express my life force, that means this is something when I was younger, I didn't realize. I didn't realize the power of effort. That means certain situations I would have effort, but it was unconscious. It was as if my own life force, I was not acquainted with my own life force or the motivation behind my existential movement. When I became acquainted with it, the first thing I realized is that when a person has comfort with the space, then they have comfort with what's in the space. So if one gets a realization of the nature of the space of their mind, then they will have an incredible contentment with what arrives, what comes and goes, or what is visible to the mind like an antenna. I would say that we have no choice when it comes to the topic of the episode, where every day we wake up, it's kind of like, I mean, as much as we want to remember, I mean, some people, it seems that they're blessed with a photographic memory, but I would say that with like a next level photographic memory, where everywhere they've been to, they can remember in consciousness. But I would say for a majority of people, how it's arising is that they sleep, and it's kind of like all the simulations of the day close. It's as if when you're in the morning, it's like simulations are opening. It's as if life force is going outwards, and it's like at the end of the day, life force is going back inwards. It's as if you expressed until your intelligence left your body, went beyond your physical body when you started living in the world, and then when the person comes and sleeps, it's as if that life force is going back. It's as if something stepped out of the inner realms to go into outer realms, do some things, and then come back into the inner realms. Again, that video game character analogy, where the character logs into the map where all the other characters are in, and what happens in what tends to happen in video games, it's like it's a quest-based orientation. So what that means is like the video game developers were like, all right, so now that everybody's in the same map, what do they do? And so you bring a hierarchy of value system, and in that hierarchy of value system, then comes the display of skill, and then comes the opportunity. That means if everybody became equal and the world became a world of like clones, where we're all clones of like the same individual, like that would be ridiculous. That would be literally the game of life will end. That would be a sort of inner extinction, even though we're existing, but it would be as if the psychology and the variety of human psychology diminished. And something about culture we have to know, of course, culture is a system. And anytime there is a system, a person has to look at the consequences of that system. Now, culture, and when I even think about global culture, it's not only just a bunch of systems in the same room, it is... to be able to speak about it, let's say, it's this one giant system, and this giant system is changing, and I would say it's changing in accordance to the conscious input and a lot of unconscious input. You know, it's as if an architect consciously builds a house, and then imagine there's an earthquake or something happens to that building, and that building falls down. Do you know? Let's say a demolition company gets the wrong building. That's tragic. Like, but let's say it's like two empty buildings, and the demolition company like gets the wrong building. Okay, so it would be as if one person's unconscious action, ignorant action, can destroy the effort of other conscious actions before. There's something in Zen, they call it mindfulness, and the simplest way for me to explain mindfulness is like in one statement, don't bang the door shut. That means gently, consciously close the door. And so I would say in our relationship with creativity, it's as if the mind is like a door. Believe it or not, it's a door, and sometimes it can be a doorway, like, you know. Those people who you, for example, this is my theory on psychology fragmentation. So there are, like, first of all, there's 8 billion different human beings, again, 8 billion different DNAs, but at the same time, 8 different ways these DNAs are receiving the world. And some people, for example, I've seen, I was at this house party where the host of the house party came and said, "Hey everybody, I have multiple personalities." The host literally told everybody in the house party that he had multiple personalities and went to explain the different personalities. And later on, I went to the host and I asked him, "Hey man, so do your personalities have a soul?" And the person was like, "Yeah, they have a soul." And then I asked him, "Do they have the same soul?" And I remember he just paused. And then I realized it was more like a display of words than an actual reality for him. You see, this have to be mentality that we have to be something all the time means that we have to make a quick decision, and when we have to make a quick decision, most likely it can be unconscious. So what it is, it's like we are all just an unknown intelligence roaming in the space-time continuum through an embodiment. Now this unknown intelligence, in its manners of expression, both to itself and to others, people are not just communicating to other people, they're communicating to themselves. Your mind is self-communication. So this self-communication can get out of hand, and this is where I developed something where I call it, I've talked about it so much, I call it the inner realms and the outer realms. The whole situation of us feeling that a person is insane or sane is just based on their performance in an alphabet. What that means is, let me give you an example of what I'm saying. I'm saying that what we call normal civilization is like an alphabet that a group of people the majority of people have accepted. Okay, they're like, okay, this is how it works, and laws are like part of that alphabet of ways of mobility in the world, in the social world, in society. So society is a system. This system is set with laws. It literally has gears and it's moving like a machine. And this system that is moving like a machine, these laws that it has, it's the acceptance of these laws that makes one an individual. That means if people, imagine there's a group of people on an island and they are starting off like Lord of the Flies situation, but imagine with much more complex psychologies. And so imagine instead of the kids killing each other due to like greed and desire of survival or like ego, imagine they were all kind people. They weren't violent, any of them, in the Lord of the Flies example. And Lord of the Flies is a novel by George Orwell, I believe, where it's a bunch of kids getting stranded on an island due to a plane accident or something. A plane accident, and then these kids have to survive together as a group. So imagine like getting stranded, imagine being a kid in a classroom, and imagine getting stranded on an island within the classroom. That means it's like, there's levels of psychology at work, Now, what I'm trying to say is, imagine all these kids, all these people stuck on the island, suddenly they are first of all non-violent. That means in the whole time of this example I'm saying, they are not being violent, but one of them comes and says, "Hey guys, I am not one person, I am two people," right? And then all the other people are like, "Hey man, you can't be two people." So suddenly a hierarchy, a sort of imbalance begins. But now imagine other people are like, if this person is two people, I'm going to be three people. I have three personalities instead of two personalities. And what I'm trying to say is that the ecosystem is setting the parameters where behavior is being accepted, right? So when we look at society, I would say it is an invention, it is a self-inventionism. That means literally to be an individual in the world requires an effort to look at that world and how that world moves. This is why when, for example, people who speak different languages or people who are from different cultures, right, when they communicate with one another, it's like it's so easy for them to get angry at each other. It's so easy for each of them in their own language to be like, look at this, piece of work, So you see, it's as if it's like the program, just like Matrix. How like people, like Morpheus was like outside of the Matrix, looking at Neo and seeing these different codes, or all the people in the Matrix had sort of codes on it. They were like codes on a screen. I would say that our psychologies are all those codes that are going, and our psychology is kept in language, and language is what is used in self-storytelling. That means every person who's alive right now, you are a character in a world. This is unavoidable, simply because we have an individual body in a world. So what that means is, regardless of a person thinking they have multiple personalities, and of course, I'm not going to avoid how it could be due to brain, like somebody could have something happen to their brain and then something like that happen. So this is what I'm saying. It's not like it has various dimensions, right? There's a biological dimension to it too. But I'm saying that if it can be that when a person, for example, is suffering from their past, they have two personalities. They have who they are right now and who they keep thinking they were in the past, So I'm just saying that it's an attention and it's an coordinated effort, and it arises from noticing how the system is moving. That means if you were in a jungle, right, and there were tigers around and you had no choice, you would have to observe those tigers, all their exact movement, to a point where you were like a tiger in your instincts, in your animal instincts. It's like Tarzan level of consciousness. You see what I mean? So it's like if a person was living with tigers, like Tarzan lived with gorillas, he didn't even have a self. Some people have multiple personalities. So Tarzan didn't even have a personality. You know what I mean? He was just like in animal mode, right? And then as we have become conscious, the additional dimension, the mind's overlay on the body, is where selfhood arises. And somebody asked me the other day about the name Mr.Within, right, and what it means, and I told them that it's a suggestion. I did something I felt, at least to myself, to my ego, I felt it was ingenious. I felt that the name Mr.Within is not a name, that what is within is a quality. So it's as if the world is starting behind our eyes, and that's within. The light beams are going in our eyes, the sounds are going in our ears, the food is going in our mouth. You see, it's as if the outer realms is going into our inner realms to maintain it. And so those people who they may feel like, I'll give you an example. Like there was for like a year, I was in downtown Toronto, and in my breaks I would how would I tell you, like in my breaks I would come outside, and there's somewhere called Dundas Square, and I would have a cigarette. And when I would have a cigarette and I would look at people, I would just observe psychology in my spare time. Just observe. It's like free. That means so many people are looking for like psychology courses. I'm telling you, it's like human psychology is everywhere. Every moment you can learn about how the human mind is displaying itself, or has displayed itself so far. So when I was in downtown Toronto, when I was looking at Dundas Square, it was midday, and I remember I saw this person, and the way I would explain the downtowns of modern countries is that they are the streets where it's as if the defeated and the successful walk in the same streets as if they are in two different rooms. So it's as if it's a dismissal of human nature in a strange way. But when I was there, I remember I saw this person, and I feel they were maybe drunk or under some sort of heavy substance or something. But this person was kind of talking to a wall. right? And I remember I'm just smoking my cigarette and I'm being like, what is going on in the inner realms of this person? And then I realized this person has been behaved in a way, that means the world has behaved towards that person in such a way where they have become dehumanized, and the last stance of our humanity is to live in our inner realms. So what I'm saying is that it's sort of like it's like layers building upon one another. When one of these layers is not accepted, the intelligence falls back into the previous layer. You know? And so that person who was shouting and talking to a wall, not even a window on a wall, where as if they were talking to the reflection or something, the person was in their inner realms. I totally saw it. There is no such, I would say, when it comes to mental health, if you look at it through this model of the inner realms and the outer realms that I'm sharing with people, like this inner realm, outer realm model, okay? It suggests that when a person gets too stuck in their inner realms, they become oblivious to the outer realms. If a person is too stuck in the outer realms, they become oblivious to their inner realms. So this kind of suggests that creativity is a middle ground, where from the inner realms something can come to the outer realms, and from the outer realms something can in some sense go into the inner realms. There's a story, for example, about Edison, where they say Edison, when his mother was giving birth to his younger brother, it was at night and it was in some sort of barn. And so what Edison does is, they have candles, they're like, he hasn't invented the light bulb yet, but there is mirrors, and Edison does something genius, that he goes and finds all the mirrors around in the environment and comes and places these mirrors behind the candles, and it's as if, like, during the whole process of childbirth that the mother is going in, it's as if there is this kind of like more light in the room because of the mirrors, the more of a sort of glow of the light, you know. It's as if like all the candles became doubled in perception. And so it was as if Edison had a curiosity, he had a relationship with light. It's as if his whole life he had been looking at candles, as if, how can I create this in a different way? How can I create a miniature sun, you know? The way I have found, and that observation I made in Dundas Square, was simply that I realize human beings are all over the place, both in the inner realms and outer realms. And when a person becomes emotional, imagine an angry person. An angry person can be angry at the wrong person, as if they've got the wrong person, as if somebody, imagine, throws like a paper ball at your back and you're like an angry person, and just and so you turn around, you get angry, and you think the person behind you did it, but then it was somebody else. But in that moment, people are like, yo man, it wasn't this guy who threw it, you know, it was somebody else. But that person is so angry that they are convinced. So the more emotional we become, the more it's as if the slower our inner realms are changing. But when you look at someone who's not that emotional, like, I don't want to say Spock from like Star Trek, I mean that's too far, but I would say, like, when you look at someone who's not emotional, it's as if in their inner realms the events of reality are changing quicker. So you can say an emotional person is having a slower inner realm movement than somebody who's in the outer realm and is being pulled towards the inner realms. That means there has been moments where I have I'll be frank with the audience, like, there's been moments in my life where it's like I have not had an emotion like on myself or something, but then in a completely random moment, it was as if the cup had been filled to the brim, and suddenly, like, I burst out crying. You know what I mean? Like, it was something where it was as if it was like, it was I don't know how to say it, but it's kind of like emotions are how we either wanted the moment to be different, or we want the moment that is happening now or in the future to be different. So it's an expectation. It's as if when the outer realms doesn't behave in accordance to your inner realms, the person gets mad. And our species has to overcome this anger of, as if like right now as I'm speaking, if somebody comes and says something else, I don't go like, you're wrong, no way it's like that. I see it that as if I am one person, one set of eyes in this realm looking at it, and they are another. You see what I mean? There is nothing to even get angry at, because every person has their own eyes which others don't have access to. I can't emphasize this enough. All war is starting from this. People, all even ideological wars, whether they were religious or not, whether they were esoteric focused or exoteric focused, they were all about disagreements of what does the outer realm mean in our inner realms. When you see, for example, a Muslim, a Christian, a Jew in some sense, Hafiz has this quote. He says that the truth has shared so much of itself experientially with me that I no longer use these archetypes. I'm no longer a persona. It's as if it's like the person has understood the paintbrush is not the paint. But if you think the paintbrush is a specific paint, your whole life you will just paint the world through one color, one modality of idealism. And when you look at the Abrahamic traditions and you look at their conflicts, it was just fighting over the same truth. They all believe it's one inconceivable God, but they're fighting over the message. It's as if one person sends a text message to 3 people, right? And those 3 people are fighting over who the person who sent the text message is. But it's like one person. It's as if all the systems are acknowledging one inconceivable creator of the conceived universe, of the conceivable universe. So you see, this is the whole conflict of inner realm, outer realm. This is what the advanced communicators of the future generations will, in some sense, are here to do, right? It's as if we have been caught in the dualism of this or that, and then in the future people are going to be like, hey, you guys who are fighting over this or that, stop it. It's way more multidimensional than any of you can conceive. Therefore, we are rendered as explorers of reality. That means an explorer doesn't have a past belief. Do you see the difference between an explorer and someone who's a follower? The follower doesn't have the courage to explore. Do you see? But the explorer, which is the leader of the new areas the eyes go, has the courage to explore. And when we fear change, we believe. But there is the concept of faith, which I would say surpasses belief. To me, belief and faith are different. Belief is a context, shape-oriented. Faith is as if shapeless trust. As if when somebody says, I believe in this person, it's as if they're trusting that person's ability, right? So when somebody, in some sense, says, I have faith, they're believing in a specific ability of that person. When somebody has faith, it's as if whatever the person does, it's as if they trust. So it's like an unconditional trust in contrast to a conditional one, right? And I will tell you, if you have an unconditional trust with your moment of being, for a second, forget that there's we're on a rock in the middle of nowhere, and just be like, okay, my eyes have opened in this world, and my eyes provide a space of access, provide a sort of space of perception. In this space of perception, there's information. So the first thing a person does is try to pinpoint themselves in the physical. This is why individualism is important. This is why this is why in my school, in the halls of the school of thought that I walk in, I say be human first, then go towards whatever metaphysics. Because if you suddenly feel you are oneness, let's say you're a person who's interested in like yoga, and you're like, yo man, I'm oneness right now, we're all oneness right now, it's like, great, but oneness can't build a civilization. Oneness oneness has no need to do anything. That means it's like, the unity renders nullification of activity. And so I feel that there is a divinity to our individualism, But we feel, based on maybe past texts or whatever, it's like desire, ignorance, all this, like that individualism is flawed. People talk about the ego as if it's evil. It's like that person was so egotistical, like God, But I would say the best metaphor for the ego is that it's like an egg. And when you look at an egg, if the egg is crushed from the outside, there is no life. Excuse me, when the egg is when the egg breaks from the outside, there is no life. When the egg breaks from within, from the inside, there is life. And when a person, imagine you tell someone, yeah, you're this kind of person, and that person goes on believing. Imagine a young child is told it's a failure, and that child goes on believing its whole life it's like a failure. Like, first of all, how tragic and ridiculous would that be? But at the same time, it's as if that child, in order to surpass the archetype given to it by the environment, has to use its own direct experience to experience a world where their eyes moved in first. Right? This is what they say in true the true guru-disciple relationship, where a lot of people have forgotten this. Where it's as if the point is not a guru. The point is not like some holy man and everybody's like, yo, this guy's holy, yay. It's like the point is that the guru, the external guru, is there only to reflect to you your inner guru. What that means is, like, the point is not in some sense that somebody else, comes and gives you what you can only do for yourself. Do you see? Even though in the future I'm trying to build an advanced civilization, because there's a lot of blind spots. Like, a person can't do everything, but we all have skills in, you can say, concentrated specific areas of reality, right? So if we had an advanced civilization, like our civilization right now, if like a light switch, okay, it like suddenly, instantly, 8 billion people were like, yeah, we are just human beings on a rock in the middle of nowhere. What's the fuss about? What's the wars about? We're all here trying to, like, Lord of the Flies style, but it's the planet instead of an island. A planet, we're stranded on a galactic island, a universal island. So do you see what I mean? It's like the shift in the mind permits new mobility for the body. This is my own approach to healing, which I haven't talked a lot about, but I guess I'll say something here. First of all, of course, there's a physical component to healing that can't be ignored. I'm not going to focus on that much. I'm going to focus on the inner sort of healing, right? And the inner healing, I'm not saying like the person just prays and something happens, right? There's some people who pray and they don't know what they're praying to, and there's some people who know where they are, and rather than them having a prayer, it is the instantaneous result of the effect. That means some people wait for their prayers to be answered. Some mystics, their prayers are answered instantly. The moment the intention arises, the universe sends a response. Cause effect, baby. So what I'm trying to say is that the inner realms and the outer realms is very important to discriminate. And in our outer realms, the novelty is slower. That means that maybe technology in the future advances ridiculously, and in the outer realms, like, we can change, or right now there's a sort of vertical gene transfer going on. Maybe in the future technology permits there to be horizontal gene transfer, so our bodies can change. We literally create a shape-shifting civilization where anybody can be anything. It's like that. I'm seeing that way far in the future. Or what else can I say? Like, the outer realms can change quicker, and the inner realms can change quicker. When your inner realms is slower than your outer realms, you, in some sense, suffer your body. But if your inner realms is quicker than your outer realms, it's another way. In talks before I've said that when you live as a mind, projecting a body rather than a body projecting a mind, then the speed of your intelligence, oh my god, the laptop's back is the speed of your intelligence quickly grabs the charger. driving sounds that we're hearing, these car noises, that's literally someone's creative ability. That's literally a human being in a vehicle looking at their outer realms landscape, making decisions from their inner realms, witnessing probabilities in their inner realms and deciding. You know, it's like when you ask someone, it's like, what do you want to eat? And imagine it's like between, I don't know, traditional Italian pizza and like traditional Japanese sushi, you know. You know, a man can dream, you know. It's as if those are two probabilities, and yet the person can make one decision in the outer realms. And those people who can't decide in the make a selection of the inner realm probability may feel confused in the outer realm. So I would say when it comes to mental health, there is no, again, like normal and abnormal people. I would say there is pretty much a tension that has not understood that it can manifest individually and it can also manifest multidimensionally, but not in the outer realms. That means in my inner realms, I have perceived myself as a geometrical shape even. Like in my inner realms, I'm not limited to my biology, but in my outer realms, I am limited to the biology. In the outer realms right now, I have just one biological body. You know, but when I close my eyes and I wonder about all the different worlds I could exist in, or all the first person points of view that I could look at, it's like that surpasses the human thought. So guys, my attention came to the chat section. Yusuf says, what do you mean by body projecting a mind? So I was making this contrast that some people are living as a body moving their mind, and the body projecting the mind, and some people are living as the mind projecting the body. You look at lesser species, you look at animals, okay, it's as if their body is, it's as if their attention is very in a crystal clear way in their body. You know, they're starting as the body. That means the body is more real to them than their mind. It's only the human being that has somehow had an ability in certain states of mind to attain a sort of attention that, wait a minute, where's free will coming from? So when you reverse engineer your free will, you come to this realization that your awareness is a space noticing itself. And when you function as that space, you're not a person, you're not a body that has a mind. You are your whole moment space, which is the mind, where the body is moving in, right? So it would be the distinction between the body moving in you and you moving in the body, right? You being the body, or you being the space where the body is moving in. When I give these, like for 7 years where I've dedicated myself to these talks, that's what my daily experience has been like. And you can notice things before they happen in the body, right? So it's as if a person, and think of it this way, it's like, and it's something that in esoteric traditions, in ancient mystical traditions, some people were like, yo man, it's like they weren't even questioning the soul. They were like, yo, you got a soul, but the soul is best, the soul handles the body best when it's outside of the body. It's as if ancient traditions were saying, ancient mysticism was saying, you got to be in a third person player, like like in a third person point of view, and play the game. And well, those people who are in their body, they are playing a first person point of view. It's as if it's a first person view. That's the distinction. So you become third person, but you become third person in a way where it's as if a space doesn't have shape. Everything in space has shape, you know, but space, like what is the shape of space? Can someone please tell me? The planet has shape, but space doesn't have shape. We could hypothesize that space is an invisible sphere, but who knows, you know? By the way, questions are welcomed, and I encourage questions. When people ask questions, I get to see how the inner realms of other people have moved. So anyways, this distinction between the inner realms, outer realms, and for me, creativity is when something is happening in the present that has made your outer realms for a second pause, and has made your inner realms for a pause for a moment, and that experience is a complete reformatting of everything you were before. So believe it or not, for example, for me, every time I've come and given these talks, every next day that I give a talk, I am somebody. It's as if I am shifting my inner space, or like expanding it. As if, think of the mind. When I say the inner realms, think of it as a dark forest, and think of our outer realm identity, our persona, being like somebody with a lantern. And this person is like with a lantern or a flashlight or something, going into the forest of their mind, and in some sense noticing how the nature is in some sense there, or how it's happening. And every person's mind, it's not like unknown phenomena is in the outer realms only, it's also in the inner realms. This is why Carl Jung's and many scholars of the sort have had a focus on trying to map the unconscious. That means it's very easy to create a map for a physical landscape, because the physical landscape doesn't change. Like, you create a map towards Mount Fuji, and so Mount Fuji is going to be there. But when it comes to creating or attempting to map the mind, in some sense, it's like it's instantaneous shifting of perception. And it could be this concept of creation and destruction is a fallacy. It could be that it's just an occurrence. It's like change is the body's vision. Beyond the body, it's not a game of change. It's not a game of changing in something. The world is not a prison to escape from, or a school to endlessly graduate in. The world is an event beyond fathoming. That realization will create the most sophisticated human being. You know, that's where I'm standing and giving these talks, where I'm like, no way, the unknown is unknown. This is what I feel is the epitome of knowledge and language. Beyond the language threshold, there's experiential access. There isn't ideological or linguistic access. So it's as if the personality can't get through a door. Like, imagine there's the person sees this door and tries to open the door, and the door doesn't open. That's the experience of the personality trying to find truth. But when the personality, as various sages have said, it's as if the path towards spirituality is kind of like where you sit, you don't chase the butterfly of truth. You sit still, you sit down among the flowers, you sit among the nature of your universe, and you sit still, and the butterfly lands on your forehead. And this is the algorithm that this whole episode I've been trying to tell people. This is where you reach a state where there is no such thing as writer's block. You know why? You know why there's no such thing as writer's block? Because the universe is endless content. That means I remember when I first came to give these talks, right? I was like, what am I going to talk about? 10,000 talks? Like, what am I going to say? You know? But then I realized we are living in an unknown world. It's as long as the concept of exploration stands, conception is endless. So everybody can be a pioneer, or everybody becomes a pioneer when they notice an unknown dimension to whatever system they're in. And we have been conditioned where normality is like known, where people are like, okay, this is what normal is, and this is what it has to be. But if you look back at history, people in like, what was it, like the 1700s in England, they all would wear top hats, as if you didn't wear a hat, you were like an animal. You know, so those people who wore hats, it was an emblem of civility, right? But now, if somebody wears a top hat, we're like, hey buddy, you think you're above the rest? You think you're special, huh? You think you're a magician, you know? So you see, it's like now it's not normal for people to wear top hats in the street. but it was for a time. And imagine somebody was born during the point phase in England where everybody was wearing top hats, and the person's like, why do I need to have this on my head? Why do I need to have this, like, a slight weight on my head? Do you know? Why do I need to cover my head? It's like, so that person could be shunned by society. This guy is not normal. This guy thinks he can live in society without wearing a top hat. It's like, get out of here. You know what I mean? So that person could be exiled from the normality of that era, right? So normality is something, culture is like a story where 8 billion people are writing different parts of it. And the ability of the advanced communicator is to notice that the known and unknown variables of communication are found in every moment. Every moment. If there is a known, there is an unknown. If the person think of it this way, if the person thinks they're bad, it's impossible. There has to be a good self to contrast with. If the person thinks they're good, it's impossible not to have a bad self to have a contrast with. Do you see? And so the species is in the dualism of language. So creativity is moving beyond this linguistic simulation. And this could suggest that in the future, we will reach a point where their identities evaporate and people begin realizing that it's a collective movement. What that means is right now, we are like drops in society. Every person's an individual. We honor the individual. We respect the individual. We care for the freedom of the individual. There's universal human rights. But in the future, there may be just universal rights. There may not be universal human rights. It could be that the drops realized they were a river from the beginning, or even surpassed the river stage and realized they were an ocean. And that moment when you realize you're an ocean, it doesn't mean you were never a drop. It doesn't mean you were never a river. It means you're all of them, right? So it's as if I talk about it as if in my own models of what I feel has happened in evolution. I design it, I create 4 stages for it. I say there was first the unconscious world. There was no creature, there was no body, nothing. Then this unconscious world turned into an unconscious self. The body emerged, but there was no awareness that I'm a body in the world. Okay? Then this unconscious self became a conscious self. Then people were like, yo, I'm in a world right now. It's like I'm a self in a world. Now the next phase, which hasn't come yet, is the conscious world. That means we evolve potentially in the very far future to a position where we are the earth that is breathing. We're not people. This could be in the future, I'm saying. There's a lot of mysteries encapsulating our worldviews, everybody's worldview. But I feel that that's what makes sense. There was an unconscious, it's as if checkmark. We checkmarked the unconscious world, we checkmarked the unconscious self, we checkmarked the conscious self. Now the conscious world is the only thing that has remained. And cyberspace is a suggestion of a conscious artificial world, a collectively conscious artificial world, or the suggestions of a cloud mind in the future. So creativity is a recognition that there are dimensions to reality that are based on the form first, and then there are dimensions of reality that are based on the formless space first. If you somehow in this life realize that unconscious space, you will experience a moment where for the first time in this life, you will not be anything to yourself. You will not be a good person, bad person, this kind of person, that kind of person. You will realize how attention is being moment instantly. The instant cannot be testified. You can't give evidence for something that is instantaneous. You can't prove it in accordance to another moment. It's as if it's one moment. How can you prove one moment? It just is. Hence the concept of universals in philosophy. for me, I'll be honest, guys, whoever's listening, I don't know why, but there is this urge within me where I think about my own life and I see that, let's say, I don't know, the lifespan, they say it's 100 years. So I see 100 years of living where there's like, sure, the person's going to have different personalities and whatnot, you know, different senses of persona. As the Japanese say, there's a saying where they say the man is the room he enters, the man is the room he's in. So it's like tomorrow you're going to be in a new room of the world, and the next you're going to be in a new room of the world, right? So for me, I thought about this notion of, in some sense, okay, things are changing. If I live for my, I think about the mysteries of myself, they are not as vast as the mysteries of the collective. So that urge within me is a way I can give it words. It's as if it's like a person wanting to survive and wanting to care, so wondering about the future of their own survival, then the person identifying as the whole species and wondering about the survival of the species. Do you know, or imagine, like, you can totally create a scientific mythology, a scientific mythos, you know, or a ethos, where in this, depending if it's on the future or the past, where you can create a scientific context where there's this God that appears, this extraterrestrial appears, and this extraterrestrial is tired of existence, and this extraterrestrial Lord looks at reality, and let's say it's near the planet Earth, you know, and this extraterrestrial Lord broadcasts to all existence, I want everything to vanish, even myself. You know, as if a God that wants to destroy itself rather than people wanting to destroy God archetype, right? In that scientific hypothetical situation, I'm saying, right? So in that case, human beings will suddenly be like, not on our watch, you know, and all members of the galaxy in that sci-fi context will immediately assemble and engage. You see, it's like there is no such thing, I would say, as leadership when things are peaceful. When things are continuing, there is no leaders and followers. It's just beings being beings. But when there is a sort of not dismissal, but a sort of annihilation of the potential of the continuity of existential intelligence, then the roars of the Celestials are heard against that extraterrestrial lord in that example, right? So the cosmos begins roaring. You know, there's lions in every sector, universal sector. Or in a sort of sci-fi mythology or a New Agean thought, they call it a level of consciousness where there are some beings, they are stewards of the earth, and there are some beings who are stewards of the universal cycle. That means there are some schools of thought that, I mean, to be honest, when I say some, I mean, it's like it's like a person can see that there are lords of space. What that means is governing conscious fields. That means it's not just the planet that is alive to all those people who think of the Gaian mind, as the great Terence McKenna spoke about, or the shamanic wisdom tried to keep that light lit in the world. I am telling you, this world is incredibly sophisticated. We as human beings are accessing a percentage of it that is very limited and slow in its fluctuation. When we wonder about the creative possibility, it has a sort of authorization. So I'll be honest, when I come to give these talks, it's as if, think of it as if there's like 4 probabilities of saying something that arises to me. Then there's an emotional layer where I feel which one is authorized to say. There's been moments where I was about to say something, and literally the logos in my inner realms, there was a feeling, an incredible feeling, like, oh my God, forbidden space, don't enter. You know, so there is various ways that the human mind fathoms the possibility of reality. And if I was to give people just a quick technique of brainstorming and creativity, it has to do with the concept and context and which one changes. So that means, let's say somebody, you see like the concept of nuclear bombs and you're like, oh man, this is a problem, right? It's like, so one solution is get rid of nuclear bombs, right? And imagine we can't, like nations are not getting rid of nuclear bombs, so the set solution, another problem solving approach would be like, okay, we can't change the concept, let's change the context. That means in the future there may be super intelligent computers. Rather than us creating movies of us fighting technology, we should have a very compassionate relationship with technology. So what that means is, it's like, rather than trying to change the concept, some people may suffer, they may have stress or anxiety because they want to change who they are, but they don't realize sometimes when you change where you are, you automatically change. The who you are automatically changes. And it's literally emotionally true, you know, when somebody is around people they have an affinity for, they feel comfortable, they feel open, you know, when you're around those who care, you know, and then those who don't care, well, what happens? The person locks down their inner realms, literally creates like barricades, you know. There's been times where I remember I was talking to someone and then they shared an idea which was so, I mean, it was in an evil context, but to me, I got this feeling of disgust. And that feeling of disgust made me instantly, literally disconnect my co-creative intelligence with that person's inner realm. So there are moments like that, you know. And so really, you know, there's been times where I have had hatred. This was in my youth, where I had a sort of hatred for the outer realms not being similar to my inner realms. And then suddenly, like a flash of lightning, like a realization, the outer realms is in no obligation to listen to your inner realms. So what that leaves us is in a situation where our minds are giving offerings to the universal sector, and the universal sector decides which goes forth. For example, these 1700 episodes are how what my life force has expressed into the space-time continuum, and it's as if like the subscribers are the suggestion of like, you know, that's the effect it's had. But the ability to recognize that the winner's aura does not have hatred, does not have greed, does not have restlessness. For once these are renounced, then emerges your greatest being. I will tell you, it's literally like we're a glass of water and there are like particles that are not, like there's dirt in the water. And I'm telling you, the purpose of life is kind of like you serve your own intelligence and then you command it. That means it's like everybody has a ticket in being in existence, and this ticket gives you two opportunities: one to be a receiver in the world, and the other to be that which expresses, an expression in the world, an expressor, you know, an espresso. Just a little wordplay, you know. You know, imagine somebody experiences a level of oneness, you know, when somebody's like, do you want coffee? The person's like, buddy, I am coffee, you know. It's like oneness out of control, you know. It is really duality that has the privilege of control. Oneness is not a vehicle. Oneness is being. Being is its mobility is, there is no person in the vehicle anymore when those people who attain samadhi. Yoga is so fascinating, guys. Like, it's incredible, you know. So let me see. What else can I say about creativity? This inner realm, outer realm distinction is the whole thing. When a person gets convinced by their inner realms, that's ideological worship. So if you look at history, I say this in previous talks I've mentioned, people were worshipping objects. They were like, yo, this object is truth. Then somebody was like, no, this language is truth, right? Now, beyond that relationship with a subject and object will imply a space that the subject and object is being observed. So think of it this way: anybody who is suffering from how they're an object, quickly notice how you're being a subject, and anybody who's suffering from how they're being a subject, quickly notice how you're being an object. And if you can witness these in the same moment, you come to this strange state of the attributeless. And I don't know how many human beings on this planet have an ability to be comfortable with the attributeless. That means it's like that's really what mysticism is. Mysticism is like the realization that space is alive before what's in the space is. And you know, what is the purpose of our limitations? To surpass them. You know? And even if we don't surpass them, at least in the inner realms, we can. You know, a belief is like someone feeling like you can only open doors by pulling them. Now imagine this person, how many doors they would go to with that one belief and not be able to open the door because they're engaging the moment only through that context. Some doors you gotta push them open. You know, some states in reality, it's about being conscious of this emergence. For example, women have a greater responsibility, just greater physical responsibility. That means if women stop deciding to be mothers, it's like that's the end of humankind, you know, or decide not to have children, you know, that's kind of like the, you know, inner extinction. So really, you know, people may feel that like feminism, you know, has this notion that women were not equal in the past. But I will tell you, women are the authorization of human beings into the world. So really, it's as if, and now think of it this way, that the type of person you are is an energy. Like everybody considers their energy, right? I mean, nobody would disagree that there's some sort of energy, intelligent energy right now. So it's what kind of energy you have. If you're someone who has a lot of hatred, like who knows if, for example, in history, like Hitler's mother maybe had an incredible hatred for something, right? And so when that child was born, in some sense, that hatred kind of echoed, right? So it's as if your psychology is very important because it is suggesting in every moment what is expressing through you. You know, if a person feels they're lucky, you know, feels, not thinks they're lucky, they feel. They just feel they're lucky. They may suddenly find in so many moments where the luck is happening because it's as if they are channeling that state of mind of possibility. Not in a robotic law of attraction way, you know, that law of attraction thing in the New Age community. I mean, there is metaphysically significance to it, but I would say at the same time, it's like the, you know, law of attraction books attract a lot more law of attraction books. So those people who believe in law of attraction, you will definitely attract a lot of law of attraction books too. So, you know. But the idea is that we are a human being that the world has never seen before, all of us. And so that is a great responsibility for the civilization, for all those to come. So how you walk in this world is way more important than what you think you are in the moment that it changes. In a changing world, we have started to believe things, you know. It's like everything you believe, either you change or the world changes. So really, faith is the only thing that is left. Faith is superior to belief. Beliefs change. What's faith? Faith is there. Faith is like an awareness to your presence. Belief is like the consciousness of your personality. I feel mysticism has re-evoked a new life force in continental philosophy. What this means is that in our methods of trying to understand where we are, we have chosen to see it in definite ways and in indefinite. And those who honor the unknown, there's your eyes will see way more than those who honor something only in one known way. You see, it could be a laziness of intelligence not deciding to be an explorer of its life. You know, some people don't realize that they have been born in this life not to just be in a world, not to see others, but to see who they are for the first time. You know? In yoga, there was this concept of the divine remembrance, where a yogi, like they had this notion of reincarnation, so the yogi would quickly remember their work from the past, and so it was as if quickly the person, you know what it is, it's like you log into the video game and go back to the quest of the previous character you were. You know, it's as if a sort of, you remember what you are, and then automatically the work of your soul happens. But if you are constantly looking for something, then you dismiss your own eyes from seeing what was there from the beginning. I feel everybody is creative. What does this mean? This means that everybody is right there in the middle between the known and the unknown. I just remembered a quote from Aldous Huxley, incredible quote. This quote is like deserves to be in the Museum of Language in the future, where I've predicted there will be a museum like that. If I have the abundance for it, I will definitely set it into motion. But what I'm saying is that Aldous Huxley says there are things known and things unknown, and in between are the doors of perception. And what Mr. Within is saying is that that door of perception is a revolving door, and so our inner realms are more you can say an unknown viewer. In the outer realms, you're a known viewer. You know, in the outer realms, you're like, who's looking? You're like, yeah, me, this body. But when you close your eyes and you wonder who's looking at the memory or who's looking at the visualization, it is no longer a who. It's as if the body is an object, so it can be contexted with a subject. But the mind, which is a subject, how can it be contexted with a subject? It leads to a nullification. So the mind may be leading to subjects, but it is not a subject. What is viewing the mind, you can say. This is where the hard problem of consciousness has brought the species. You know, where we're like, why is it that we can move our hands and our bodies, but we can't change our DNA? Why is it that there is free will applicable in certain domains, and why is it not applicable in certain domains? And of course, this goes to the brain and the biology, but also it goes to the life force. So for me, I see like the human, these two, like just look at these two words, the human being, right? We're all saying we're human beings. The human is based on the shape, do you know? But the being is based on the energy. So what I mean by this is that the human component is a sort of living in the geometry of reality. The being component is how you are before there is any movement. That means first I was a human being, then I realized I am being first, then there is human framework in my moment of being. So this means we are reaching a point. I mean, when I say we, I feel like people are going to eventually realize that a conscious world is coming into emergence. That synchronicity is the sign. Synchronicity is coincidences that people experience. It is all sort of as if the species is returning to its divine memory, as if the species was a yogi and it's trying to remember where it came from. And when it remembers, it's a field that moves the moment rather than a particle in the field thinking that it's the field. Thinking that it's the particle is creating the field. It's like we're a boat in an ocean. Materialism feels the boat is creating the ocean, and immaterialism feels that the ocean is where the boat, in some sense, where the boat is in. And free will is like there's a captain to the ship, and the captain of the ship is the idea of ourself. That I thought.
Alright, guys. It's been 2 hours. Oh my god. Okay. Some final statements. I said that this episode was a precursor to a future episode, The Portals of Creation. That's a episode where I actually wanted to give that episode first, but I felt like I need to explain novelty. I need to get into novelty a little bit, right? Because the portals of creation, I'm going to be focusing on the significance of the biology, and really, it's another way where I wrote, like I've written it down here, the portals of creation, and there was a possibility to name the episode "Are Women Portals?" So I wanted to focus in some sense on how do I say it? How we are living through each other, even though we're living beside each other. That's the remarkable multidimensionality of our world. Our eyes have deeper eyes. Our eyes have eyes. It's like we have the biological eyes, but then there's the mind. So the mind is like the third eye to the body's eyes, right? And then the soul, which is the pure unknown. So it's pretty much this. It's like an object is being viewed by a subject, and then a subject is being viewed by the unknown. A known object is being viewed by a think of it as if solid, liquid, gas. The body is like solid, the mind is liquid, the soul is gas. The soul you can't see, right? The mind you can see, but it moves, and the mind requires a container. And the body is solid, so the body is like the container for the liquid of the mind, but what is pouring the liquid of the mind in the container of the body is neither mind or body. So there is so much more to everything. There is no such thing as everything, I would say, because that means it's contained. And reality could not even be a thing. That means this whole time we've been like, oh my god, we're born and then we die. It's like maybe that is not the main event. That the main event is happening in a background, as if we think we are the concept, but we're actually the context, and we don't realize that at any moment the concept can shift with the awareness of the context. So that means somebody asked, what do you mean by a body projecting a mind? Literally a particle thinking that it's creating the field, and then when you live as a mind, you're the field that is moved, the particle is being moved in. So that means your free will surpasses your own body. By the way, guys, I'm reaching the end of the episode, so feel free to ask questions. These live streams happen once, and when I give these talks, like I'm in the vibe of the talk, so people can ask questions about it if they like. Really, creativity is you trust the unknown and the known emerges, and because you've trusted the unknown, you automatically trust the known. It doesn't mean the known is right. It doesn't mean the known. It doesn't mean just like right now as I'm giving this talk, I have no idea who's going to hear my talk and what's going to happen. But because I'm alive once, I'm like, why not? Why not share the inner realms with the outer realms? A very important idea I just remembered. I gave this episode called The Hunter-Gatherers of the Inner Realms. I personally feel that's one of my personal favorite episodes I've given. And the hunter-gatherers of the inner realms, was I was seeing that in our history we went into like tribes, and as tribes there were hunter-gatherers. And what that meant is that pretty much there were explorers in the tribe, and the explorers went and found something and they brought it back to the tribe. Now I feel we are like a mind tribe, a collective mind tribe, and so it's as if we're adding to the database. We're pretty much hunter-gatherers of the inner realms. That means we're no longer just looking in the outer realms and bringing and sharing something with the people. We're looking in the inner realms, and the inner realms is a domain of incredibly unknown exploration. That means it's like beyond the Night's Watch if it was Game of Thrones. Okay, so Yusuf says, you say we are, in the chat section, he says, you say we are neither the mind nor the body, so what is this unknown that is watching above? Exactly. It is the instantaneous awareness of object and subject being observed by the unknown. That means you are it. That unknown is the you that is inseparable from the universe. If I was a yogi, I'd tell you it's when the Atman finishes its journey in the objective dimension and subjective dimension and realizes beyond that it's just contentment. There's a saying in Sufi mystical thought, and not just in Sufi mystical thought, it's just like a parallel, it's common also in yoga, where they say the person who doesn't know the truth, they suffer, but the person who knows the truth enjoys. That means it's like the totality. When I talk about an advanced civilization, the civilization is so advanced that it's reached a point where all that is left is to enjoy the existence we're in, than constantly trying to survive in the Hunger Games of its dilemmas. That's when we become a planetary civilization. Right now we are a fragmented, it's literally like the planet has multiple personalities, and those are the nations, you know. We're judging multiple personality for individual human beings, but we're not judging multiple personality or multiple nationhood for the planet, right? And what would be that emergence? And the way I thought, it's impossible for nations to be like, yeah, we're all the same. So what's going to happen is that there's going to be an additional dimension. So all nations will have the word SUB dash connected in front of their nation. So if all nations become sub-nations of one planetary force, which I have termed that it's like it's civilization 2.0 is not lost in nationalism. It is freed beyond the fragment its own people. Because really it's as if the moment we can have a contentment, all right, like how many unknown things are happening? Like it makes more sense that we are unknown than known just by the percentage. If you look at like how much of stuff happens in an unknown way and how little stuff happens in the known way, which is the creation of our knowledge, right? So that we're on a rock in the middle of nowhere, and suddenly these creatures started making noise, but they started pinpointing this noise and linking it with images, right, which could stand the test of time. So knowledge is pretty much 8 billion creatures on a rock in the middle of nowhere, their best attempt so far at trying to stabilize or trying to center themselves. Knowledge is an attempt of universal intelligence to center itself in symbolism. So anyways, guys, thanks for listening. If you like these episodes and feel like supporting the podcast, there's a membership provided also. And as the great poet Jalaluddin Maulana Rumi says, he says, out beyond 700 years ago, this poet said this, he said, out beyond ideas of right doing and wrongdoing, there is a place. I will meet you there. And when the soul sits on that grass, the world is too full to talk about. That is when the species goes beyond the language threshold. So Joseph in the chat section, and another question is coming. He says, how do I share the inner with the outer without all my insecurities? So first of all, before having, forget your concept of insecurity for a moment. And just take into this notion that you are, simplify it to a degree. This is how I have the confidence to give these talks. where I'm like, okay, I'm just a biological creature on a rock in the middle of nowhere, that something, an unknown intelligent activity is happening, either to it or as it or through it. Do you see? You simplify. If reality is too complex to express in, you simplify. So I would say, if there is insecurity, that means there's a way that the moment is being interpreted where limitations are above 50% compared to limitless perceptions. So you simplify it. That means imagine a person's like, man, why is life happening to me like this, right? The person would just be like, okay, life is happening. Do you see how simpler that is? Right? When you realize you and all of us, we're all creatures that for a temporary time are traveling or roaming the space-time continuum. And we don't know what is doing the roaming. That's the whole deal with the metaphysics. So I would say, become a disciple of your simpler self, Joseph. Try to wonder when you were simpler how the complexity of the insecurity wasn't there. You know, there was a time where I felt I didn't deserve some things in life, okay? And it was a sort of insecurity, but then I realized I'm the only one who's looking at it that way. Right? So when you realize how the nature of our sight changes, you don't fear a changing world. Rather, the game of fear stops in the inner realms, and the game of understanding begins, where you want to understand your insecurity rather than accepting it as an insecurity. You want to understand how your eyes are being piloted in the space-time continuum, and everybody has the freedom to realize they're free. It's like you're free. You know, we have the freedom to realize freedom. You know what I mean? And at the same time, it's not like everything's perfect. I mean, like I'm me as a, like when I go in the outer realms, like when I'm right now, I'm like with the presence of my own mind giving this talk. I'm alone giving this talk, right? So it's as if I don't have that many opinions on myself. But when I'm like around people or in society, then a lot of opinions, a lot more layers of contexts, dimensions of possibility, probabilities arise, you know? And the biggest thing is that if you are thinking that you have an insecurity, that's because your attention is seeing yourself more important than the others, right? If I think my opinion is more important than the opinion of others, I may suddenly give into an emotion and be like, no, I don't want to talk. You know, I don't want to give a podcast. But when I'm like, okay, we're alive once, nobody knows what's going on, and all of us have a responsibility to attempt at least to figure it out. So think of it this way, that instead of you accepting that you have an insecurity, you are an explorer of reality, and so far the picture has come across to you as that way. Because in the inner realms, we can direct it, but there's a lot of things people don't have control over. You know? I've had desires, you know. There was someone who I felt I had fallen in love with, and then that person had not had the same inner realm. You know what I mean? So it was as if like sometimes your inner realms can be creating the outer realms too soon, so you hesitate to share. But if you come to that simplicity where you're just present, that means, think of it this way: find your simplest self and simplest state of being, and when you are comfortable with that, you will become automatically comfortable with all complexity. I am telling you, that's how it works. When you're comfortable with the simple, or think of it this way, those people who fail and they still have an effort to keep going, they become fearless because they've seen the simplest format, the simplest outcome. So imagine if you're someone who has insecurities, just in your inner realms, visualize what's the worst case scenario, right? And then once you've seen it, then you don't get startled. Do you see what I mean? There was, I'll share this last thing as a response to your question. I was sitting on my porch, I think this was 2 years ago, and I was sitting on my porch, it was midday, and in my inner realms, for some, I don't know why, but my inner realms, I visualize my most chaotic self, and I visualize my most ordered self. And in the visualization, they were looking at each other, and for a moment they just looked at me, right? So it's a suggestion. It's like when you wonder about, when you find the edges of the spectrum, then it's like when the pilot knows how to navigate through different elevations, then there is no such thing as insecurity or not. There's just, when did your effort stop? When did your it's like where's the life force being piloted? That means if somebody doesn't express in the outer realms, your life force is still expressive, so it's being expressed in the inner realms. So an insecure person is like, they're not insecure in their inner realms. They're not insecure about thinking they're insecure. So it's an outer realm thing. So I would say it's just become acquainted with the levels of your eyes, the elevations of your intelligence as a presence, as an intelligent presence in the moment. And there's one thing I would say in the earlier talks: there's only one way to live for life. You live for life. Because I'll be honest, if I even when I'm giving these talks, if I prioritize my own emotions, then I would say I'm tired. I've spoken 2 hours. You see what I mean? But when you prioritize something beyond yourself, you automatically have energy. So I would say, if anybody listening, if you're someone who has an insecurity, like, who knows how you're conceiving your insecurity, I would say amplify it. Do you know what I mean? That means, like, I'll give you an example. Like, I decided to give 10,000 talks in 2014 just to see if it's possible. That means people can come and say good talk, bad talk. I'll be like, thanks, but I'm doing it to see, is it even possible? Can I pull it off? Do you see what I mean? And when the number was so much, when I thought, like, okay, how does a person go about giving 10,000 talks? Then a single talk should be instant. It should be no problem. That means if you're trying to be, let's say, 1 step ahead, you'll be insecure. But if you try to be, like, let's say 17 steps ahead, then you suddenly see 7 steps ahead was no problem. It was instant. It was like, it wasn't like, so that means it could be that you are seeing too small of a world. You got to change the context. You got to realize the world is way bigger than how that insecurity is a photograph of oneself. Because I'm telling you, it's a great ability not to take yourself seriously, because it's not like fools are on the outside. A person can be foolish too. I've done some foolish things in this life, and in those moments, I have an option to be like, oh my God, I was a fool, I can't continue anymore. Or I have the option of like, oh man, I was a fool in that moment, and like in my mind, I laugh about my own reality sometimes. I'm like, no way that moment happened. Even like, there were some moments where I remember, like, I got super embarrassed, and years later I was like, that was so in the inner realms. Like, it had not, like, it was my own psychology's approach to the world. It wasn't how the world was, because nobody has your eyes. When you realize this, you find the lion's roar of consciousness. You realize your own value. But it's not a shaped idea of self-value. It's just, I'm an unknown attention here, navigating, being mobile through the biological body, right? So anyways, guys, just like this astronaut, there's a whole universe in front of you. Engage it and share your findings with the tribe, and let us usher in an advanced civilization through the advancement of communication. And as I say, the advanced communicator is the most advanced communication of the universal sector. So when you realize you're a universe happening rather than a specific self happening, all those insecurities really go away. And sometimes you need to have an ability to be like, okay, I'm just a simple creature, like this is the level of my ability in this moment, right? So believe it or not, to be able to accept your eyes leads to being able to use them. But if you can't accept your moment, then a lot of things are going to happen, and the person's going to be in the inner realms, not consciously confronting them in the outer realms. This happened to me in my youth, where I would say I was Rather than caring for the outer realms, I cared more for my inner realms, so I didn't engage that. But our eyes carry a mystery that surpasses all our ideology. Explore the beyond, for that is what is left to do. Thank you for listening, guys. I hope this episode was helpful.